Have you ever wondered why the windows in ancient castles are so narrow and inconvenient for viewing? It seems that the architect simply saved on lighter stone, but in fact, each such slit was a complex engineering calculation. We are used to seeing castles as romantic ruins, but at the time of their construction, they were perfectly tuned machines for the survival of the garrison. Here, geometry became more important than brute force, and the angle of light could cost a defender their life. Watch the video to the end to find out how a simple window slope could turn a single archer into an invulnerable combat unit capable of stopping 100 attackers. What if I told you that the empty space in the wall was more dangerous than the stone itself? To a person standing at the foot of the castle, the arrow slit looked like nothing more than a thin, dark line against the gray masonry. From the inside, the picture was completely different, resembling a wide cinema screen. The walls of the embrasure widened into the room, forming a deep niche that a person could enter. This allowed the archer to move left and right, changing the angle of fire by tens of degrees. Thanks to this shape, one person could control a huge sector of space in front of the wall. The enemy saw a point, while the defender saw a panorama. The stone for such windows was processed with particular care, grinding it to smoothness. This was done not for beauty, but so that an accidental enemy arrow would not ricochet from the unevenness into the room. The angle of the bevel was calculated to dissipate the energy of incoming projectiles. Any object that hit the edge of the loophole simply bounced off to the side without causing harm. Architects created a system that forgave mistakes by defenders, but severely punished attackers. The height of the embrasure was also part of the mathematical equation for survival. The windowsill was at a level that allowed the archer to rest his knee or elbow comfortably. This reduced physical strain, allowing the person to conserve energy during long hours on duty. Fatigue was as much an enemy as the army outside the walls, and architecture helped combat it. The shooter's comfort directly translated into the accuracy of their shooting. The loopholes were often arranged in a checkerboard pattern on different floors of the tower. This created a multi-layered zone of destruction with no blind spots. If an attacker dodged a shot from the first tier, he inevitably fell into the firing range of the second. The continuous wall of fire was the result not of the number of people, but of the clever arrangement of the openings. The castle functioned as a single organism. In winter or windy weather, the narrow external slit minimized drafts. The wind did not blow out the torches or freeze their hands, which was critical for handling weapons. Numb fingers could not effectively pull the bowstring, so staying warm was a matter of combat effectiveness. The engineering solution protected against both arrows and the climate. This ingenious simplicity of design still amazes engineers today. We see here the perfect balance between protection and functionality, achieved with minimal means. The stone was simply placed at the right angle, and that changed everything. Do you think there are solutions in modern architecture that are just as simple and effective? Write your opinion in the comments. Are you ready to learn the truth about how one line changed the history of sieges? For a long time, loopholes were simply vertical slits designed for archers. The bow is a vertical weapon, and the archer needed space to maneuver in this plane. A narrow vertical slit was ideal for a person holding a bow. However, military technology did not stand still, and the emergence of new weapons required changes in architecture itself. With the advent of powerful crossbows, the old windows became inconvenient and ineffective. Crossbows have horizontal arms that required space to swing. The vertical slit did not allow the crossbowman to track a moving target, as the weapon rested against the stone. A solution was needed that would combine protection with the ability to aim horizontally. Thus, the famous cross-shaped loopholes appeared on the walls of castles. This new type of window became a real nightmare for besiegers. The horizontal slit allowed the crossbowman to fire in a sector, controlling a wide strip of terrain in front of the wall. The vertical part was still used for archery or for observing distant targets. The versatility of the shape allowed different types of troops to be used at a single point of defense. The garrison could respond flexibly to changes in the enemy's tactics. The widening in the center of the crossbar was often made round, which provided additional visibility. This place was called the apple and served as the main aiming point. It could be used to insert more powerful weapons or for observation. Stonemasons carved these complex shapes with jeweler's precision. An error of a couple of centimeters could prevent the archer from aiming his weapon. Inside the room, such a loophole was equipped with a special wooden bench or support. A crossbow is a heavy weapon, and it was impossible to hold it at a distance for a long time. The stone windowsill often sloped downward to shoot at enemies approaching the wall. The ergonomics of the shooter's workplace were thought out to the smallest detail. Convenience meant rapid fire. Some loopholes were shaped like an inverted keyhole. The lower round part was intended for firing handheld culverins, early firearms. The smoke from the shot immediately escaped outside, without blinding the defender. The stonework was adapted to technological advances in weaponry. The walls changed with the times. Particular attention was paid to protection from ricochets, which became more dangerous with the advent of crossbow bolts. The edges of the loopholes were beveled not only inward, but also outward, creating a complex profile. This scattered the kinetic energy of enemy projectiles. A bolt that hit the edge would split or change trajectory, flying into the sky or into the ground. The stone acted as active armor. The location of such windows was planned so that the firing sectors of neighboring towers overlapped each other. A crossfire zone was created in which it was impossible to find cover. The cross-shaped form allowed the lines of fire to be accurately converged at a single point. It was a mathematically calibrated network of death. Geometry became the main ally of defense. Outside, such windows were often decorated with decorative elements, masking their true purpose. The enemy could mistake a deadly embrasure for an architectural ornament, but behind the beautiful facade lay cold functionality. The aesthetics of the castle always went hand in hand with its defensibility. What if I told you that stone was only half of a castle's real defense? Today, looking at the ruins, we see only empty, dead eye sockets of window openings. But in its heyday, these eyes looked very different. In winter, the bare stone of the narrow embrasure instantly turned into a kind of wind tunnel. It howled as it sucked in the icy air, snow, and dampness, turning the garrison's life into an icy hell. To prevent people from freezing to death and to keep them combat-ready for weeks, the windows were equipped with an ingenious system of wooden shutters. These were a kind of eyelids for the castle, which were opened only to deliver a deadly blow. During the active phase of the battle, the shutters became an additional dynamic shield. When enemy archers fired a volley, the defenders simply slammed the wooden eyelids shut. Thousands of arrows pounded helplessly on the oak boards, causing no harm to the people inside. As soon as the noise of falling arrows subsided, the shutters opened slightly, and the castle responded with a crushing volley. It was a deadly game of hide-and-seek, where the life of every soldier was at stake. The internal mechanics of the shutters were sometimes astonishing in their complexity. There were systems with horizontal pivots and ropes. By turning the gate, the defender could smoothly adjust the height of the heavy shield. This allowed him to change the angle of fire while remaining as covered as possible from return fire. The crude mechanics here were completely subordinate to the tactical tasks of the archer. In winter, the gaps between the wood and stone were carefully caulked with wool, rags, or moss. In huge stone halls exposed to all the winds, every degree of heat was worth its weight in gold. A soldier who was stiff and shivering from the cold was a poor shooter with slow reactions. Therefore, insulating the windows was not a matter of comfort, but a matter of direct military necessity. Everyday life and war were intertwined in every small detail of the interior. Another interesting detail was the sloping shields that were installed outside directly above the embrasures. They worked like umbrellas, protecting the embrasure from slanting rain and, more importantly, from overhead fire. Arrows fired by the enemy in a high arc simply rolled down these slopes with no chance of flying inside. An ordinary sloping board became an insurmountable physical obstacle for the enemy archer. Unfortunately, the wooden elements rotted or burned down centuries ago and have hardly survived to this day. That is why in popular culture, the castle appears as a cold, bare stone box. But modern reconstructions reveal a complex and, in its own way, cozy system, where each element was designed for a long life in effective combat. The castle was not just a wall, it was a living, breathing organism. The architect's ability to combine the eternal monumentality of stone with the flexible functionality of wood was a feat of the highest order. But how did the defenders cope when the enemy, despite the stones and arrows, still managed to bring a ladder and get close to these narrow windows? More on this in the next chapter. A medieval battlement is not just a hole in the masonry, but a complex optical device designed by craftsmen who understood the laws of physics long before the advent of modern textbooks. The architects of that time masterfully used the properties of light to create a one-way visual barrier. The deep inner slopes of the walls, widening toward the interior, acted as a giant light filter. They created a soft, diffused twilight inside the defensive niche, which completely concealed the details of a warrior's face, clothing, and movements. Outside, to a person standing in bright sunlight, the narrow, dark gap of the window appeared completely black, impenetrable, and frightening. This sharp contrast in lighting served as the perfect natural camouflage. The shape of the slopes also worked for acoustic reconnaissance. The stone funnel, widening inward, acted as a megaphone, collecting even the quietest sounds from outside and directing them to the ears of the sentry. From inside the tower, it was possible to hear the distant clang of armor, the quiet murmur of soldiers, or the creak of a cartwheel long before the enemy came into view. In the silence of the besieged castle, the walls literally listened to the surrounding forest and roads. Sound in this tunnel became as accurate a source of information as sight. With walls sometimes reaching 3 or 4 meters thick, the embrasure turned into a real stone corridor. The physics of this space were relentless. For an enemy arrow to get inside and hit its target, it had to fly in a perfectly straight trajectory, exactly along the axis of the tunnel. Any slight deviation would cause the projectile to hit the side walls, lose energy, and ricochet. Thus, the sheer depth of the wall became a physical shield that filtered incoming threats. Inside the niche, the ergonomics were thought out to the smallest detail. The floors were often made stepped, creating a multi-level combat platform. This allowed the archer to change height. He could stand up to his full height to aim, kneel down to shoot, and then quickly retreat to the lower dead zone for a long crossbow reload. The dynamics of movement inside the static stone ensured that the enemy would not be able to catch the defender at a moment of vulnerability. The ceilings of the niches were formed by sturdy arches. This was not a matter of aesthetics. The arch redistributed the enormous weight of the multi-ton wall above the opening, directing the pressure to the side supports. Even if the wall began to crack from the blows of heavy trebuchets or battering rams, the arched window retained its geometric integrity, allowing the defense to continue to the last. Special niches were often carved into the side slopes, stone pockets for storing arrows, bolts, or water vessels. The archer's workplace was organized so that he did not have to take a single extra step. In the heat of battle, when seconds decide everything, ergonomics became synonymous with life. The light penetrating through these narrow slits drew clear stripes on the floor, which served as a sundial for the garrison. By the movement of these rays, people in the dungeons and casemates knew the time of day and the changing of the guard, living in strict rhythm with the heavenly body. The stone provided not only a physical barrier, but also mental support, allowing the warrior to focus on a single task. The embrasure was a complex engineering structure that worked for the defender around the clock, using the laws of optics, acoustics, and geometry. The defense of a medieval castle was never built on a single plane. Architects and military engineers created a complex multi-level fire system in which each floor of the tower performed its own strictly defined, unique function. The loopholes on different tiers varied significantly in shape, size, angle of inclination, and purpose. It was a veritable vertical army, solidly frozen in stone and ready to meet the enemy at any distance. On the uppermost floors, under the roof itself or behind the battlements, there were narrow long-range slits. From here, the garrison's best archers fired harassing shots at the enemy's reserves, supply trains, and siege camps located hundreds of meters from the walls. The height gave the arrow not only tremendous additional energy, but also a significant advantage in flight range due to its steep trajectory. It was a kind of medieval artillery, working proactively and forcing the enemy to suffer losses even before the actual assault began. The middle tiers of the towers were traditionally equipped with loopholes, ideal for crossbowmen. Their main task was to accurately and surgically take out commanders, standard bearers, and lightly armored infantry at medium range. Cross-shaped windows here provided the widest possible horizontal firing sector, preventing the enemy from regrouping or finding cover behind siege shields. At this level, not only accuracy was critical, but also the density of fire, turning the space in front of the castle into a deadly maze. The lower floors, the base of the tower, often had specific embrasures adapted for heavy-mounted crossbows, powerful handguns, or early powder cannons. From here, direct fire was directed at the most dangerous targets: siege engines, mobile towers, and battering rams. The walls at this level were the thickest and most massive, designed to withstand not only the weight of the entire tower, but also the counterattacks of enemy catapults. This was the last and most powerful line of defense, designed to physically destroy the enemy's means of breaking through. This echelon arrangement allowed the castle to fight simultaneously at all conceivable distances. An enemy that managed to heroically overcome the long-range fire zone immediately fell into the zone of responsibility of the middle tier, and at the very walls it was met with devastating fire from the lower floors. The defense was continuous, exhausting, and multi-layered. Not a single step toward the walls could be taken with impunity, as the defenders literally layered their shots on top of each other. An important element of the system was well-thought-out vertical communication. Through special hatches in the floors and a system of communication tubes, commanders could instantly transmit orders and redeploy archers depending on the direction of the attack. If one tier was under too heavy fire from enemy archers, the defenders could temporarily retreat to the floor above or below without ceasing resistance. The flexibility of this system saved lives and allowed the garrison to maneuver within the stone armor. The spiral staircases connecting these tiers were themselves a sophisticated defensive tool. They almost always twisted clockwise as they ascended. This was done so that a defender retreating upward could comfortably strike with his sword in his right hand, while the attacker was hindered by the central stone column, which blocked his swing. Even inside the tower, when the walls had already been breached, the architecture continued to fight for its owners. Each step worked to physically and morally exhaust the enemy. Different levels of loopholes allowed the creation of so-called fire pockets, pre-sighted areas in front of the wall that were shot at simultaneously from several heights and at different angles. Interestingly, the number and size of windows almost always decreased from bottom to top, with the exception of the battle gallery at the very top. This was dictated by structural considerations. The lower part of the tower had to remain as monolithic as possible in order to withstand the enormous pressure of the entire structure. Architectural strength went hand in hand with military expediency here. The balance between the need to see the enemy and the need to preserve the integrity of the wall was perfected. This strict vertical hierarchy made storming the tower an incredibly difficult, almost impossible task for any military commander of the time. To capture the castle, it was necessary to suppress firing points on all levels simultaneously, which was technically impossible in the conditions of medieval warfare. Today, we stroll through castles like carefree tourists, taking vivid photos against the backdrop of picturesque, moss-covered ruins. We peer curiously into the arrow slits, trying to see the beautiful landscape or capture a good shot. But in these moments, it is worth pausing for a second and remembering, this idyllic landscape was once a zone of absolute death. What is a romantic backdrop for us was, for the people of the past, the only thin line between life and imminent death. Each surviving embrasure is not just a hole in the stone, but a true monument to human ingenuity born in extreme conditions. It is material proof that a cold mind and precise mathematical calculation can defeat brute physical force. The defense of the castle was the greatest chess game ever played, where the pieces were stones, iron, and human lives. And often this game was won long before the first shot was fired, on the parchments of the architect who drew the ideal angles of fire. By studying these cold, silent stones, we learn to understand the very logic of survival. We see how harsh limitations give rise to ingenious innovations. The chronic shortage of people on the walls was compensated for by the clever geometry of the openings. The shortage of resources was compensated for by the multifunctionality of each ledge and each niche. Castle windows remind us of an eternal truth. Security is not the thickness of a steel door or the height of a fence, but above all, a competent, sober assessment of threats and the ability to use the environment to one's advantage. The history of fortification is not just an endless list of wars and sieges. It is a fascinating chronicle of engineering design, ergonomics, and practical psychology. Medieval craftsmen who did not know modern terms understood human behavior under extreme stress better than many of today's experts. They did not just build walls, they created an environment that helped people remain effective warriors when the whole world around them was collapsing and burning. The next time you find yourself in the corridors of an ancient fortress, don't walk past the windows. Try standing in the position of an archer for a moment. Feel the cold stone embracing your shoulders, assess the angles of view, and feel the incredible distance created by this narrow opening. Imagine how this tiny ray of light in the depths of the niche gave hope and a sense of control to those inside. At that moment, you will see the castle with completely different eyes, not as an architectural monument, but as a complex mechanism for survival. These silent witnesses of the past can tell incredible stories of fear, courage, and technical genius, if only we learn to listen to them. Their language is the language of geometry, understandable without translation across the centuries. We have only slightly lifted the veil on the world of medieval engineering tricks, where every protrusion of the wall hides its own little secret. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the galleries of history. Knowledge of the past deepens our view of the present, and understanding the price at which peace was achieved makes it much more meaningful. Which type of battlements do you think was the most revolutionary for its time? Classic vertical ones or maculations with vertical drop? Or maybe you were more impressed by the psychological aspect of defense? Write your opinion in the comments. We are very interested to read your thoughts. If you want to learn more about the secrets of medieval construction or siege tactics, be sure to let us know. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new insights into history that aren't covered in school textbooks. See you in the next videos.